Welcome back to my hometown. Thanks for taking a little time to join me today. Please welcome my guest today. He grew up in Coppell, graduated from Midwestern State University, and after moving back to the Metroplex and working for Keller ISD, he and his family moved to Bowie in 2011. In 2011, he started working in Bowie ISD and has been the principal at the elementary, the junior high, and the high school campuses. Please welcome my guest today. He is starting his 5th year as Superintendent of Bowie ISD, Mr. Blake Enlow. Thank you, Blake, for joining me today.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. So I'm excited to sit down and visit with you. We have a lot of things, I'm sure over the years.
Right.
As principal of all the different campuses, as superintendent, very challenging, probably the last 4 years, because you're starting your 5th year, and some changes going into the 5th year. So we'll kind of get to all that.
Okay.
But I kind of want to go back to kind of always send all my guests a questionnaire and kind of find out what the background is, what where you're from. Mention you graduated from Coppell.
Right.
And so you went to Midwestern in Wichita Falls. What made you decide to go to Midwestern?
Well, my parents are very close. We're a very close family. And my dad has one brother, and his brother actually lived down the street from us in Coppell growing up. And he had 2 boys. And when I was in upper elementary school, they moved to Wichita Falls. And so we started making this trip back and forth between Coppell and Wichita Falls to visit them a lot. And then in the summer of 1993, right before school started, we were coming this direction to go visit them for the weekend. And my dad found 60 acres out off of 1125 past the lake a little bit. And so we stopped in there that night and took a look at it and went and ate at the Golden Corral. Here in Bowie.
Where now is Dos Chili's.
That's correct. It is now Dos Chili's. And so
I worked at Golden Corral in 1993.
That's right. So you might have waited on us that night for sure. But that was our first trip to Bowie, was in August of 1993 to make that trip. And so we stopped through and ate dinner, and my dad was very excited about that potential opportunity of buying that land. And so he got back up the next morning, drove back down here, and met the individual that owned the property and said, "Hey, what's it going to take to make this deal happen right now?" And so that was kind of our connection to the area to begin with. So he bought that land there and had an old house on it, and so we started working on fixing the house up and spending time hunting and fishing and doing a lot of those outdoor activities with my brother and I and my mom and dad. And then my grandfather actually ended up buying some land across the street, and then my uncle has since bought some out there as well. And so we've got a little over 200 acres out there, and so that was kind of the connection to the area. Spent a lot of those years in high school growing up, spending time out there, and one of our real dear friends was our youth minister in Coppell, became the youth minister at First Baptist Bowie here during that time too. And his name was Mark Seekins. And so Mark was here for a little while. And so we had a little bit of connection during that time, did a few things, went to Six Flags with some youth kids from here. And so I had met a few people from here and spent some time here in town during high school and that kind of thing. But when it came time to make a decision to where to go to school, had spent time in Wichita Falls with my aunt and uncle and their family, and Midwestern had a small town feel. I've always kind of been not a real big city guy, and didn't want to the big crowds. So tech and big schools like that were, I enjoy rooting for their athletic teams and that kind of stuff, but going to a place where there's 50, 60,000 kids was not really up my alley. So really was interested in Midwestern, and at Coppell at the time was a growing small town. So we moved there in 1984 when I was 5 years old, and it was 2A. They played Bowie and stuff back in those days.
It's hard to imagine now.
Right. And we were the last really small class to graduate. There were only 298 of us compared to the 800,000 and 900,000 kids they have in a grade level now. And so we were the last kind of small group. And so that's always been a draw, the small town and being in a place that had those values in that feel. And so that was kind of the draw to Wichita Falls, and how we kind of ended up there. Met Addie. Actually, we had a class together our very first freshman year.
So were you living in Wichita?
I lived in the dorms. When I moved into Midwestern, lived in Pierce Hall, and it's definitely not the same place that it was in the fall of 1997. I've gone back up with some kids here to visit and look around and going, man, it's nice compared to what it was back then and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I lived on campus, and she, grew up in Holiday and lived in Lakeside City, and so she was from the area and was living at home and commuting back and forth, and we just became friends at that point.
So did you meet your freshman year?
Met her, and we actually had a freshman English class together that very first fall, our freshman year. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. We were in the same class together and became friends and that kind of. We didn't start dating until we were seniors.
Really?
Yeah. I tease her a lot. I said it took her a lot longer to figure out I was the one. She had to try out a few other ones before we could reach to that point. But yeah, we were friends for a while, and then our senior year we had a couple English classes again together because I'm an English minor and she had an English emphasis in her interdisciplinary studies degree, and so we started dating our senior year and didn't date very long, and then got married that next fall, or got engaged that next fall, and I student taught at City View ISD while she was teaching in Wichita Falls ISD at McNeil, and then I got a job at Keller High School, and then we moved to Denton and got married in June of 2002.
So what was it like? You got the job at Keller, and then she said, Metroplex, or was that kind of the whole idea was to move? Yeah,
I probably would have stayed in the area, in the Wichita Falls area here, down in this direction. But she growing up in Wichita Falls and that wanted to try a different scenario, different situation. And so I had a friend who had just become the head basketball coach at Keller High School, or he was going to be the assistant to the guy that was the new head basketball coach at Keller High School. And so I had done some camps with them in the summer, and so they were looking for an assistant in the middle of the year. I'm just kind of fortunate it worked out. And so I graduated in December. Addie had actually graduated in May the year before and was working at McNeil Middle School there in Wichita Falls ISD. And so I went ahead and moved to Denton, and we were already engaged. And then when the school year finished for both of us, we got married in June, and then she got a job at Hillwood Middle School in Keller ISD the next fall.
And that was in 2002.
2002, right.
And so you were there for
5 years, roughly. In the teaching and coaching role for me until I did two and a half years at Keller High School, and then they opened Central High School in Keller ISD, and I went over there for 2 years as a teacher coach, and then so I did 5 years of that, and then was able to be assistant principal at Central High School for 5 years before we came up here. So 9 years, actually, 4 years in that role.
And then when was it during that time that they said we want to try to get back to Bowie in the area? Because when were you have 3 kiddos?
3 kiddos, right.
When was the first one born?
Laney was born in 2008. And so when I moved into the administrative role as an assistant principal, after a couple years, it said, okay, we want to start looking at the opportunity to be a principal of a campus. And so that was probably 2007, 8-ish, right in that range, right around the time Laney was born. And so my parents had moved up here full-time back to Bowie in 2006. And so we put the dot in Bowie and said, how far are we willing to move? So because family's a big thing for us, we're very involved with my folks. Addie's parents have both passed, but making sure that we're close to family to be able to spend time with them was important. And so we really put it at about an hour and a half commute to Bowie. Interviewed a few places and some different things, and it never kind of worked out. Had interviewed here in the spring of 2011 for the junior high principal job. Made the finals 2 there, and they went with somebody else that had more experience. At that time, I was 28, 29 years old. I was a young guy, and so most people look at that as, hey, that's a 29-year-old, 28-year-old kid coming from the Metroplex, doesn't care anything about the area, just wants to get that principal's job and then take a stepping stone.
So then you were so how old were you when you became an assistant principal?
I was 26.
26.
Yeah, by the time school started, I was 27, because I had a summer birthday.
So I'm always curious, and then we'll go back to going back here.
Yeah.
How is it when you move from teacher coach?
Right.
Because you're really worried, concerned about your kids and those kind of things. When you move into a more managerial position,
right,
of now it's teachers and staff that
Correct.
Is that a challenge even though, you've been through all the classes and all that, it's way different in life than it is in class.
Yeah, it's never the same. It's never like it's written in the book. Mm-hmm. And I've told everybody, every position level, whatever category or position you hold, it's always different. You can be as prepared mentally with the book knowledge and that kind of thing, but until you sit in that chair or have that weight of that responsibility, it's just different, And so, yeah, absolutely. Moving from, I actually was an English teacher and assistant basketball coach at Keller Central as 26 years old. And then my birthday was in the summer, I was 27, and then transitioned to assistant principal who was in charge of the English department.
And so how's the response of teachers to a 26, 27-year-old?
It can go bad in a hurry if you don't spend the time on the front end to build the relationship and the rapport with them. And a lot of times, you hear the "do as I say, not as I do." And that has to go completely the opposite in that environment. If I had been somebody who was haughty, puffed up, and being able to tell them, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, instead of, hey, I've been in here with you for the last 2 years. I know how hard you work. I know what you do. How do we do what's best for kids, and how do I spend time supporting you in that role? I think that was the key to helping that situation and bridging that gap. There were ladies in there that were, old enough to be my mom. At that spot, and had more experience teaching English at the high school level than I had years on this earth, and that kind of thing. So you've got to make sure that you value the experience of those folks and value those folks as individuals and who they are. And you can't come in and, say, well, I've got the title, I'm going to blah, 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 and that kind of thing. So I think that's always been something that's been heavy on me, because I've always been fairly young in the positions that I've gotten, and so making sure that I don't ever get the big head or allow those kind of things to get in the way, or cloud the judgment and that kind of stuff, because it's not about title. Most people, I'll say, educators don't get into the business for the money or get in for the fame or the recognition or whatever. They get in because they want to help kids, or they want to care. For me, I care about this community as a whole, and that's what it's about. Making sure that we try to make decisions that are going to set up our kids and set up our community to be successful down the road. So yeah, it definitely can be a challenge moving into that role. It was funny one time. I remember right after that first fall I was assistant principal, there was a parent came in and we were having a conversation, and she goes, "Are you even old enough to do this job?" And I said, "Well, I've got the certificate, so I've got enough experience, and I passed the test. But age, I'm not so sure I've got it all figured out."
And it comes with experience.
Sure.
I mean, like you said, you can't have the degrees and the titles and all that, but it really comes down to experience.
Right.
And I agree 100% that it's connections.
Right.
And yes, you may not have the experience, all the years of experience of administration, but if you can rely on those teachers that do and say, hey, let's do this together, that makes a huge difference with people.
Yeah, if everybody's pulling the same rope, I keep a picture on my computer, and it's the difference between a boss and a leader. The boss is sitting on the platform and everybody's pulling the boss one direction, versus the leader's out in front and everybody's pulling everybody in the same direction. So it's just a total different philosophy and a thought process on how to get everybody together and pull in the same direction.
And so 2011 is when you applied for
Bowie Junior High School.
Bowie Junior High,
right?
For
junior high principal.
Junior high principal,
right?
And
it didn't
overlooked.
Work. It didn't work.
So did you kind of expect that, or did you go in thinking I got this job?
No, I had to. At that point, I had interviewed for 2 other positions in other districts and thought, hey, I'm fighting an uphill battle. Being a young guy trying to, but I'm not going to give up. And keep trying and keep working through that direction. And so, it was disappointment. Actually, I had interviewed at a neighboring community and got this call 2 days later that I didn't get that job either. But the Lord has His hands in everything. And I look back now at both of those spots, and He directs our paths. He takes care of us, and He doesn't. Sometimes we may want something a little faster than He wants it for us. and he has a different plan and purpose for what he's doing. And so I don't think either one of those situations would have been as successful for me now looking back.
It's got to be pretty devastating at the time.
Sure,
young family,
young family, going, man, golly, this has got to work.
And you look a little bit at the money, you go, man, that'd be all right.
Yeah. It was my parents. The parents were here; they'd been here a couple years, and I'm thinking this is going to work, and it just didn't. And I had a good spot in Keller and was very excited about that. But they were going. This was also 2011 was the big House bill budget cut in education, and they cut $5 billion out of the budget. And so there were lots of budget cuts and things going around different places. And so there were lots of challenges, especially in Keller. We were facing a lot of different stuff. And I know they cut a lot of positions here. And so that would have been difficult to walk into right on the front side of being a young guy and knowing what Mr. Moncrief and the team had to deal with that spring and cutting the 20-something positions to the district. It would have been a challenge for sure. But like I said, the Lord has his plan, and went back to Keller and went to one of the middle schools as an assistant principal over there. And my heart knew that I didn't want to go to a middle school, but my head knew that career-wise and things that I needed to go to a middle school because I had taught high school, coached high school, and was a high school administrator. Knowing down the road what my career goals were, I needed to look at something else. I'd worked for the same principal for those 4 years, and it, like you said, making connections and seeing how other people do things is always beneficial. So going and working for another principal, Lindsay Anderson was the principal at the middle school and had requested that I go over there, and I was like, I don't want to go do that, but I knew deep down in my head that another look was going to be beneficial. So I went over there in the summer, and it was a neat place. It was the campus had only been open 2 years, so it was a brand new building. Addie actually had gone over there with Lindsay to open that school, and so Addie had worked there 2 years before I went. Addie was staying home with the kid, with Lainey at the time, and was pregnant. Well, Lainey and Molly was pregnant with Jake at the time when we went over there. And so enjoyed that time, and then got an email from a Bowie person. And
so how long were you there?
I was only there till October.
Oh.
Yeah, so I went in August, July, August, transitioned over there, and then in August got an email from Cindy Garrett, who was at the time was the secretary at Bowie Elementary and very close friends with my parents, and said, hey, our principal job just came open. Would you even think about that? I'd never stepped foot on an elementary campus. I didn't know anything. I was like, oh my gosh, should I really? And so I went home and talked to Addie. I said, what do you think about this? And
the students really hadn't come to the middle school yet, right? So you were just doing.
Oh no, we were in school.
Okay, in school.
We were in school when that was in. The email came probably mid-September. So we'd been in school for a little while. And so the application hadn't opened yet and that kind of thing. And so we were talking about it and prayed about it a little bit and talked to my parents. And we said, I think let's give this a shot. Let's see, because we had tried the high school. I had tried the high school thing. I had tried the middle school to try to get a principal's job. And I thought, there are more elementaries than there are high schools in the state of Texas. And I said, so let's give this a shot. And lo and behold, went through the interview process, and I'd interviewed already, so I was familiar with the leadership team and that kind of thing. And so they gave me a shot. I was the one that they picked, and my goodness, what a blessing that was. Being able to, it was a challenge to move somewhere in the middle of the year.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So when did you start?
I started the Monday before Thanksgiving.
Oh wow! In
November of 2011. Yeah, I finished the first grading period in Keller. We were done. They were out for the full week for Thanksgiving, but Bowie, we went Monday and Tuesday. And so I finished there on Friday. We packed. We had been packing. Moved up here. My dad, is in real estate and had a rental property that we could move in, and moved in over the weekend. And I went to work at Bowie Elementary School on Monday morning, and had the other principal there with me for 2 days for Monday, and then half a day of Tuesday. Then we enjoyed Thanksgiving, and then it was my deal.
Then the principal at the time was gone?
Yep, she came to the administration building and became curriculum coordinator at the district level, and so she was gone. So I was like, here's the keys, get after it, figure it out,
So was that a jump from going from assistant principal to principal? And new school, just everything
within a week.
It's
a huge transition, I didn't even know the teachers' names. you know, and that kind of thing. And so I spent a lot of time that whole first year, that fall or the rest of that winter and spring, just learning who people were. You know, and I scheduled a meeting with every single employee on the campus, from the custodians to all the teachers to the food service staff to everybody, to sit down with me. So I'd put a face with a name, and I had a set list of questions that I asked them just to get to know who they were. I don't know how many kids they had. Do their kids go to school here? Are you married? You know, who are you? You know, tell me your story. You know, so I spent that was a lot of what we spent there. But, you know, moving from an assistant principal, you don't ever really deal with the financial side of what happens on the campus. You don't really deal with the budget very much. So that was a new thing. But people help. You know, Rhonda Russell was the CFO at the time, and she took me under her wing and helped me understand kind of that. You never really understand that either till you jump in. Yeah, school finance is probably one of the most convoluted things I've ever experienced in my entire life. We could have several conversations on podcasts, and nobody still understand how that thing works. But you know, so moving from that assistant principal role to principal role it's eye opening, you know, because then it is your responsibility. You know, as assistant principal, you're like, well, you know, this is a decision we're going to make, but you know, if the principal ultimately has the decision, and you moving into that, then it's like, okay, now I'm the principal. You know, and how that works.
What's if somebody's listening that is moving from that role, from assistant principal to principal, or from teacher moving into the administration role of principal, what that first year, what is the one piece of advice you might give them that seemed to serve you the best that year?
Listen to everybody, and say yes when you can, and it's okay to say I don't know. I think those are the three things that helped me the most, because I didn't have any credibility, you know, with the people there. There were ladies there that
they don't know you from anybody.
They don't know me from anybody. They may have known my mom and dad, you know, because they had a real estate office next to the Dairy Queen. They may have known them. They don't know me. All they know is I'm a guy coming from a middle school in Keller ISD. And so
a 27-year-old.
27. Well, at that point, I think, I was 20. I was 31 by the time that, you know.
So to some of those teachers,
still,
that's a young.
I was a young kid, and I can tell you some of them I could name their names that were like, who's this young guy, and why in the world would he tell me? Why would I listen to anything he has to say? You know, so spending a lot of time listening, and acknowledging that I didn't know. You know, just being honest. I don't know about teaching second grade reading. I still don't. But at that spot, you know, they're the experts in that kind of thing. You know, now operations and safety and making sure our kids are safe and those kind of things. Those are things that we can work together and that kind of. But on a lot of that stuff, I spent a lot of time listening. So if somebody was transitioning into one of those roles, listen, admit you don't know anything, and say yes when you can. You know, because if you can say yes, and then you're going to get somebody behind you and buy in with what you're doing. I think those are three things that go a long way. And
then how long were you at the elementary principal?
I was the elementary principal for 5 school years. So I was over there, you know, and I answered every year, when are you leaving? Because I was the 4th in 5 years. There were 4 principals before me. Every year changed. They had changed every single year. And so that group over there was ready for me to leave. And they
not that they wanted you to leave,
they wanted me
but
to
they
leave.
expected. Well, this is the way it's been for the last 4 years.
He's 31 years old. He's going to get this, and he's going to move on to somewhere else. You know, and I said, I'm not going anywhere. I mean, I'll go if they're ready for me to go. You know, I'm not too prideful to be that way, but. You know, as long as the community and the board and the superintendent is happy with what I'm doing and you guys are happy, well, I'll stick. I'm not going anywhere. You know, and that was really, I didn't have any plans to do anything else. I was going to stay. And, you know, Lainey was fixing to go to school, and she had started. That was the point, was to get somewhere in a small community to raise our kids. And Lainey and when I became principal, she was going to start school the next year. And so I was a year away from, you know, that having to be, whatever decision we made was going to be long term. It still is. It still is the goal for us to make sure that all 3 kids get to go to school. And like I said, we'll stay as long as the community will have us.
Then how does the kind of the order work in school? If you're principal at the elementary for 5 years, do you apply for junior high position, or does administration come and say, hey, we'd like to move you around, open up this position?
Yeah, sure. It's both ways. It's lots of different ways. In that scenario, I had, been a high school assistant principal, middle school assistant principal in a big district, and that's a big job. And I was like, I'm not sure I want to go do that again. My kids are little. I'm enjoying being able to go home, and if I want to go to, that kind of thing. And so Mr. Bunkers came over one day and he said, "Hey, I want you to think about something." And he said, "I just want you to think about our district as a whole and what we need and what we're looking at. And if something was to ever change, just think about it." So, okay. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to think about that. I want to do what I want to do. And so then he said, another time during my evaluation, he said, "I think you might want to think about getting your superintendent certificate." I said, "There's no way. I don't want to do that. There's no way." So I put it off, whatever. And so,
well, what's involved with getting that? Is it more school? Is it
yes,
more?
To get a superintendent certificate then, and I think it's pretty much the same. It's you have to have a master's degree to be a principal in Texas. And so I had the master's degree, and then a superintendent certificate requires an additional 12 hours of graduate work and taking the test. So I took a mini-mester. It wasn't one mini-mester, but Lamar, the University of Beaumont, had a online program for superintendent certification, and you would take either 1 or 2 3-hour courses at a time, and you just click those. So you could do, if you did six at a time, you could take 6 hours and then take the other 6 and then be finished. Or you could do 3, 3, 3, 3. And so I think I did 6 one time and then 3 and then 3. But I got it finished and took the test. And so he finally convinced me that that was something that I probably should look at. And at that point, we were still 3 or 4 years from him even thinking about retiring. So I was like, yeah, I'll get it. I'm not going to, yeah, okay. You asked me to do it. I'll have it. I'm not going to use it. And then the conversation came, well, I want you to think about going to the junior high. The junior high, Miss Murphy had announced that she was going to go back to Nocona and head over there. And so that was at the end of the 5th year, probably the spring of my fifth year at the elementary. And, I was like, we had a little bit of challenge academically and some things going on. And so we needed some stability. And I'd been here for 5 years, and all of those kiddos that I'd had at the elementary were in the junior high, and so that was a hard decision to really make for me, because personally what I would have liked was probably to stay at the elementary, because that's a great job. That is a great job, because my kids were still in school. I still had mine at the elementary, and so I was like, but then I start stepping back, and I've always kind of been a very loyal person, and start think through what's best for us collectively as a school district. We probably need a little more stability, and I thought I had done a good job at the elementary providing some of that stability. Having four principals in 5 years and being able to be a steady person. So maybe that's the direction we need to go. And so I talked to Mr. Marcus about it, and he said, yeah, I'd really like you to go over there. And so I'm like, okay. And so we made that announcement on probably April, around that, right? April of that year. And I can't remember exactly what year it was. And so I started going over some and doing some of the spring work, and then some of the planning, scheduling, and hiring, doing all the hiring for the next year. And got through middle of June. And Coach Stark was the athletic director at the time, and he came over to have a meeting about hiring a junior high coach. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. And he said, I want you to think about it. I said, okay. He said, Mr. Shackelford is resigning this week on Monday morning. And I go, no, because I had heard nothing. I had no idea. He goes, yeah, he's out of here, and it's going to happen on Monday. And he goes, and I think you need to be the high school principal. And I'm like, no way. No way. No way. And
so you're just kind of planning on junior high getting it.
Yep,
it's a summer.
Take the junior high. We've been working on in the summer. I'd met with staff, and we were getting planning, and we were doing all that kind of stuff. Everything was rolling. And I was still helping. Mr. Volkanar had come to be principal at the elementary, so I was still helping him transition and all that kind of stuff. And then Coach Stark goes, yeah, think about it. He goes, I'm just telling you it's going to happen on Monday. And I'm like, no, you've got some bad information somewhere. Well, sure enough, Sunday afternoon, we get a text message, all the principals that said, hey, we need to have a meeting tomorrow. Mr. Shackelford is going to be the new principal at Glen Rose High School, and need an administrative meeting in the morning. And I remember I was sitting in the car with Addie when it came across, and I looked over at her and I said, we need to have some heavy conversation right now. And I said, because we're fixing to change another principal in the school district. And, and we had talked through, when I got my superintendent certificate, is that, if the high school principal job ever opened, what should I consider it? Is it something that we would want to do? And she said, well, call your dad. I was like, okay. So I called my dad, and we went and sat down and visited with them for an hour or so, just through the whole process. And I texted Mr. Monkers, and I said, I need to talk to you before we have that meeting tomorrow. I said, because I'd like to express interest in the position. And he said, okay, I'll meet you at 7 o'clock or something, And I had been pretty adamant's not the right word, but I didn't really want to be a high school principal right then, and for a while, really.
Because now you went from elementary, skip really junior high.
Yeah, I did about 3 months at the junior high, and then I was fixing to, so I got into Stephen's office the next morning, and he said, all right, tell me what you're thinking. So I talked through it, and he said, I know what you want to be and where you want to go. And he said, and I know where you are with your family. He said, so I'm not going to ask you to be the high school principal. He said, but if you ask me to be the high school principal, you can be the high school principal. And I said, well, he goes, obviously I would like for you to be the high school principal. And I said, well, let's do it. And so we went through the process and did those kind of things. And so that was probably the craziest and busiest summer of my career. Even with all some of the other crazy stuff that we've dealt with, was trying to, because I still maintained being the middle school principal, junior high principal, till we were able to get a middle school principal hired. And then so being in the planning process from April till that about 1st of July, I had to help that guy, Mr. Madrigal, when he came in. And so trying to transition, I felt kind of like I was principal of 3 places in one summer, with all the transition and that kind of stuff. And so, but it was good. Because I felt, again, it came back to, I don't really want to do what's best for me, but I felt like for stability-wise for the district, and knowing where we were in the middle of hiring, and I'd been around enough that I knew most of the people, and I felt like I could just maintain a calmness, that it didn't feel like everything was going willy-nilly and everything there at the end, and so it was busy. But really being able to enjoy that opportunity and get another group of kids that I really didn't know. That was another really positive to the experience, was I didn't know those kids. They were already gone, middle school and upper intermediate when I became principal at the elementary. And so I was able to go spend the next 3 years with your kids, and the kids that I didn't really get to know as well. And so I really didn't, that's what I do. I do this job for the kids, and I really do enjoy being around kids. And so that was really fun, and getting to go and support them and all the different stuff that they were in and those kind of things. And so,
and that's a big jump too from elementary, because you're not really going to sporting events.
No.
You're not.
Yeah.
Well, in high school now you have all the sporting events,
everything.
And as a principal, you're going to those things.
Right.
You're attending those, and that's got to be a lot, especially with a young family.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely a change, and that's why when I looked at Addie, I said, we got to talk, because I'd been on that side. I'd been a high school assistant principal, and I'd been a coach, and so I knew what we were getting ourselves back into, and with the kids being little and that kind of thing. And so I had to make sure she was good. She was okay with, and she had just gone back to working too. That year, she had gone back to teach at the junior high. And so she was good, and she's a kid person too. That's we've just been blessed that's kind of what we feel the Lord has called us to do in our careers, is to be around kids and work with kids at school and at church for that matter. And so she'd gone back and she was good, because she knew, the enjoyment piece of being around kids and getting to support them. Yeah, you do a lot with school, but, being able to go see a kid be successful in whatever it is they choose, whether it's a fine art, whether it's an academic, whether it's ag, CTE, athletics, whatever it may be, those kids know when you're there, and it means something. It means something that somebody from school took the time to recognize and acknowledge what it was that they are passionate about or spent time and put the effort into to get those kind of things done. And so those were fun times. And I think that's one of the things transitioning into this role, and I may be jumping ahead, has been a little bit different because I don't know the kids as well and spend as much time with the kids that I used to be able to do. I mean, I could go sit down in the cafeteria during lunch duty and rotate tables and just sit with kids and have lunch with kids and talk to kids and know what's going on. And kids get in trouble, they got to come talk about it. We got to deal with it. Those are just realities of what we deal with. But being in this role has definitely is different from that. I think you always know when you get off of a campus that you're going to be away from kids. The kids aren't going to be around as much. But I don't think you really know. So kind of what we were talking about earlier, until you really get into those spots, like you have a head knowledge. Oh yeah, the kids aren't going to be there, but I'll still be able to. You don't really know until it's 2 or 3 days, and you go, I hadn't been in a building with kids doing anything. I've been dealing with this, that, and everything.
And how many times you walk through a campus and the kids don't know who you are?
They don't know who you are anymore. And if you don't spend time, and I will really say the younger kids, the kids that are below my own kids' age, are the ones that I don't know as much. As well, and if, so I told somebody that this spring that I really need to make an effort at the elementary age kids. If I don't know you or know your family, I don't know them very well, and so spending some time back over at that place again is going to be a priority for me in the fall.
And then moving from the high school to superintendent, that's starting on your 5th year as we come up to the new school year in 2023. So is that's kind of the natural progression is high school principal, and then it's kind of the idea of go for superintendent. And so superintendent over the last 4 years. So when you went into that role as Mr. Moncrief left, did he kind of guide you starting out, or was it just like?
Well, it was kind of interesting
give
how
you a couple
that all,
days and good luck.
Yeah, that was interesting how that all kind of worked during that last spring when he was about to retire. He was going to transition to another position with the company, and so we had built in a little bit more of a cushion and a transition time. But that company had experienced a tragedy with an employee, and they needed him way earlier than he had really planned to go. And so they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, that kind of thing. And so he had to go ahead and go. And so he went in late April, first part of May. And so he was gone. But he wasn't. I had kind of been, tagging along him for a couple years. When I was elementary, just kind of watching and learning, and I was very fortunate. He'd let me go to things with him, different things leadership wise. Because in a big school district, the superintendent role is way different, in my opinion, than a smaller place. They're much less. They're involved, But I remember in Keller. I think the superintendent may have come to our campus, a couple times a year. And then I don't. It's just because there's 40 campuses, and even so, if you went once a week, you might get one campus, or get everybody checked off. And so, I was kind of more fascinated with kind of what he did and how that all worked, and so just watching, and so that's why I was a little more amiable. The further along the process I got to being open to doing the job, because down there I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that thing, because they're on the news all the time, and there's always something. I was like, I don't want to do that. But so. Was he grooming me or helping? Maybe. As I look back, he was just providing me opportunity to learn. So I spent a lot of time with him, picking his brain and just hanging around. And so then that spring, as we went through the interview process, I really kind of hung on everything. Hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then when he left in April, they were still finishing up the interview process, so they made Miss Walker the interim. And then in Texas, you have to wait 21 days once they name a lone finalist. And so they named me lone finalist end of April, first part of May at some point. And so there was a 21-day waiting period where I had the job but couldn't do the job. And so that's when Miss Walker and I worked very closely together, because she was doing the job and her job currently at the same time as assistant superintendent. And so it was very, very busy on both of us, and then transitioned. And so for a week and a half, I think it was about a week and a half, I got to be superintendent and high school principal that last year as we transitioned until we got somebody hired in those roles and that kind of stuff.
So and that was 2019?
19. Spring of 19, yeah.
Spring of 19.
Yeah, because then it was 19, 20, 21, 22, 22, 23, right,
so
18, 19. I can't remember, but right
so maybe 18, 19 year, 19, 20. So you're just superintendent about a year when
I know where this is going.
When 2020 happens,
yes,
and COVID happens,
yes.
So there's no. I mean, that's got to be hard as a superintendent for just a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's
because
just
it happened at spring break, basically. So
yeah.
I mean, we were in about 9 months, and you started hearing rumblings in the fall, right around Christmas. What is this thing? What's and what's going on? And about 3 weeks before spring break, the mayor called and said, "Hey, I'm hearing about this. We're going to have a city council meeting. We'd like to have y'all come talk about how this, I guess, coronavirus or whatever they, I think that's what they were calling it first, and how that's impacting school and all this kind of stuff." And at that point, there hadn't been very much communication to us about it. And so we were like, okay, well, we're going to just handle things as normal. We're going to keep doing extra cleaning every couple of days. And so I went and did that. And then it was almost like everything just hit fast forward over the next 3 weeks. And, the news and all that kind of stuff. And then it just came down at, that the spring break. We're going to go on spring break, and that's going to give this, we're going to slow the spread, and it's all going to be good. And then we came back, and Governor Abbott just said, shut them down. And we're going to online. And so it was like, okay. We were in a better spot than a lot of people were because of the number of devices that we had, laptops and iPads and those kind of things on that side of it. But on the other side, we still had families and community members that didn't have Wi-Fi access. And so making paper packets and making copies, and then all the sanitary issues with passing things back and forth to families and clothes and stuff, because kids left school and there was stuff still in the backpacks. They were still
expected to come back.
Yeah, they thought they were coming back.
Yeah,
and so we had stuff all in lockers and in classrooms and on lost and found. And then let alone on top of all of that, how do we keep teaching these kids in an environment where they can learn anything? And so we are now definitely seeing what impact that had on the kids, and for the first time, they're seeing a little bit of a tip back up in statewide scores and some information, depending on which politician you listen to.
Because it definitely was a challenge.
Oh gosh, yes.
And what students were able to learn, and I mean, I think it's just like us. If we try to learn on our own, it's different, even as adults, and kids. And then now, yes, they have online. The teachers are teaching online, but also the parents now have to have some responsibility. And when they're not used to that responsibility,
right?
They're used to sending them to school, picking them up, and learn everything you need. I don't want to do anything at home.
That's right.
Yeah, you need to do that.
That's right.
And now it comes on the parent, and we find that parents didn't do so good.
Right.
But yet, I think parents are sometimes quick to blame it on the school when it really required a partnership.
It is absolutely a partnership. It takes a village. We all have a role to play, so much in that, and I think that's it is kind of sad sometimes too that I think through that, and I don't know if it was directly related to COVID or whatever, but there for a little while there was a lot of animosity towards educators, and maybe that's something that maybe opening up and being able to see what was going on or not going on or how things were working. It kind of shifted there for a little while to where we can't do it all. Just like the parents can't do it all. We have to, like you said, we have to work together. We have to work together because, ultimately, a lot of times we spend more time with the kids than they do. If you take out the sleeping time, they're with us all day. Yeah. And so, and it goes to some of them, it was on back to coronavirus and all that I was worried about feeding some of them. over half of our kids are on a free and reduced lunch. And so that was a big priority, was how do we make sure that these kids are actually getting to eat, and so given our food service department and transportation department and all those guys did an unbelievable job of packing lunches and delivering them and having drive-throughs, and people could drive through and make sure and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, back to the teaching and learning thing, it was a definite challenge. I mean, I watched Addie teach junior high English classes online, and then I watched my 3 kids. One of them was in middle school at the time, taking middle school classes, and then my other 2 were in elementary, and how that just was a challenge, of how you teach a kid to read through a Zoom meeting.
Very, and those younger kids too, they need connection.
Absolutely.
And same thing, and I think they're finding that too, that it's not just what they lost education-wise, it's what they lost from social and connection and
interaction,
and what those teachers give to those kids. And sometimes those kiddos aren't getting at home. Unfortunately,
there's a love piece that they're not getting. Some of those kids just need a hug. Back to when I was elementary principal, I'd get hugged around. I'd get called mom, dad, all those little kids, they just need they just need to know that you care, that you're there and you care for them. And so I think that was a big challenge too, because you don't get that through a screen, and so a lot of people, I just want to see my kids. I want my kids back, and so I know as we transitioned to the next year and we kept the online option, it didn't take very long for us to continue to see we're not getting the results. I mean, we had all summer to plan, and we put together I'll say a decent plan to get things rolling, so you could rock and roll. But about mid-October, it was like, this isn't working.
Again, you can have the plan, but on the other end of that screen, there needs to be some commitment to be done. Otherwise, if the school has a great plan, if they're not connecting on the other end, it's not doing a whole lot of good.
It's not doing any good on the other side and that kind of thing. And so, at the end of that deal, we were like, you know what? Let's cut this thing. And so we started doing some research, and they said it had to be an option. And if the district makes the decision, you don't have to offer it. They can go somewhere else. And so about mid-October, we went to the board and said, we pulled the information. Our kids were not being successful. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but we had the data to support it, and the board was like, no, bring them back. And so we passed a resolution and said, no, we're not going to offer online. You don't have to come. You can go somewhere, you can go to somebody in a neighboring district that offers remote, or you can do a homeschool, or you can do an online something. But the best place for kids in Bowie was in front of a teacher in one of our classrooms. And so I had a few conversations with parents, and I said, I will not guarantee that your kid's not going to get sick. I'm not going to do it, but I wouldn't have done it 5 years ago. I wouldn't have guaranteed they weren't going to get sick. But I will guarantee you that they have a better chance at a positive impact of education being in one of our classrooms than trying to sit on a computer and learn back and forth from us. It's just not the same. And so the overwhelming majority of people came back, and so that was a good thing, but it was still a challenge throughout the rest of that year, just navigating all that, masks and
that was into 2021.
That was my second year.
And then in 21-22, it was back to full.
It was pretty much back to full go. We had to have a little bit of stuff with the federal government, had some requirements due to some funding that they had given out, but the state and Governor Abbott had said, no, we're not going to do that. So it was kind of like, well, who gets to be the boss, and who gets to make the decision. And so we kind of, there were a few things at the beginning of that year, but there weren't very many. So this year was full go.
And so this year we're moving into 23-24. So, and I want to ask about, there's going to be a big change, and I'm sure you've gotten a lot of concerns about it, a lot of, yes, it's a great idea.
Absolutely.
But this coming up school year, Bowie will go to a 4-day school week.
Correct.
There are a lot of districts around us that have already gone to a 4-day school week. And what are some of the benefits of that. I think probably a lot of people come out with the negative of childcare, of long days, of what they're going to do for food on those days. What are some of the positives? I think we can come up with a lot of negatives, but what are some of the positives that the district looked at of going to a 4-day school week for the kiddos?
I think number one is the gift of time. Knowing, living with a teacher and knowing what our teachers do and the continual increase of the requirements on teachers and stuff right now, the vast majority of them work on Saturday and Sunday. And I know at my house about 5:30, 6 o'clock on Sunday afternoon is prep time. And so Addie will start in on whatever she has to prep and be ready to go so that when they hit the ground running on Monday morning. And so Sunday afternoon is when she transitioned. And so being able to give Friday back to the teachers is a positive. I think so. I think that's one of the benefits is the gift of time. And so she can work on Friday and get ready for Monday. And then have Saturday and Sunday back to her and to the family. Not just her, but all of our teachers can do that. So I think that's one. I think two, I think it's a recruiting tool. I think us having a 4-day week versus Alvord Decatur, someone that we, air quotes, compete against for staff, gives us a little bit of a leg up. Maybe they pay a little bit better, but we get an extra day off. And an opportunity there. So it's somebody that you may have to weigh that out. That actually played itself out. A teacher from Decatur who lives in Bowie was driving back and forth to work in Decatur. And as soon as we passed the calendar, the board adopted the calendar, she reached out and we hired her, and she's going to teach for us next year. She said the benefit to not drive and have the extra day here versus driving down there every day swayed her. So I think that's one. And so a lot of it came down to teacher incentive and things to benefit for teachers. I think some of the parents, I think there's some flexibility to take some trips, to do some things. I think some parents are excited about having an extra day to do stuff. Whatever those kind of things may be. Now, there was some conversation. Well, you can do your doctor's appointments, dentist office. Well, most of them are closed on Fridays anyway. Yes. So you don't really run into those kind of things. But I just think there's an opportunity to try something different. I know that's one of the board members said. It may not work, but at least let's try something to give us we can't pay what Northwest pays. People can drive to Northwest ISD on the other side of Decatur, and people will do it and get a $20,000 raise. Somebody's going to do that. But let's give it a shot. And so we picked out 7 or 8 measures that we're going to check to see, is it working? Did we get a more increased applicant pool? And it has felt, I haven't pulled the numbers recently, but it has felt that was a yes. We feel so far this spring and summer, we have felt our applicant pool has been a little bit better than it has been in the past. We're going to run the numbers on the financial side. Do we save any money by not running the buildings on the 5th day of the week? Do we save any money by not having that extra route on the buses? Those kind of things. We're going to look at that kind of stuff. Now, does it offset with longer days on the other ones? So we've got some different measurables that we're going to measure on those kind of things.
And you mentioned that it's this year's. We're going to see how it works. If it doesn't, then
we can go back.
We'll go back. So, is there any concern about, especially the younger grades? Probably junior high and high school, maybe not be affected as much, but those younger kiddos, probably 5th grade and down, those longer days, will that have any kind of impact on learning? Just because of little brains and being tired. And I know for me, sometimes if I sit somewhere for 9 hours learning new things, I get tired. Is there any concern, or is there things in place? Because I'm sure some parents are concerned about a long day for those little ones.
They're going to have to be intentional, and that's been a conversation that we've had. It's 15 more minutes in the morning and 30 more minutes in the afternoon. So we tried to split it a little bit where it wasn't as much. And so, it's a little bit earlier specifically, but I remember when I was at the elementary, there's a ton of those kids there early. And so 15 minutes, most of them are sitting in the cafeteria. and they're waiting for class to start. And so I think that's a little bit will lessen that a little bit. But I think back to the learning piece, I think they're going to have to be intentional on chunking some information. Say, we're going to go hard and heavy on this time here, and then we're going to take a break. We've talked about additional, and there's a lot of research that supports activity and play, and those kiddos in those younger grades specifically being active. So are we going to put in another 15-minute recess where they get up and they get out and they go run and those kind of things. Then they come back, we pull them back in, and we go back on the academic side. So I think there's definitely been some flexibility and some creativity going on at both of those campuses on some of that. But yes, you definitely have to be intentional on that, because technically, I mean, the minutes are all the same. The minutes are the same. They're just distributed a different way. And so, yes, they are longer. So there's also the kind of the fear that, well, it's just going to be that extra 30 minutes is just going to get lost or wasted. So instead of having it on Friday, we got to maximize it. We can't use 4 days and so if Friday, my son said, well, Friday was the fun day, the fun day where we played games. Thursday can't become the fun day. So
every minute really needs to be
utilized and maximized. And I think that's one of the things that we've been preaching and talking, going, hey, we got to be intentional. And not that they're not that I think that they weren't, but I think just the change and that transition, they're going to have to be really intentional on making sure we maximize what we have, because the last thing you want, we go to school to teach kids to learn, or to teach kids and for kids to learn. And you don't want to do something knowingly that's going to hurt a kid anyway, but especially academically, because that's what we're here. We're here to teach our kids and prepare our kids so they can go be successful later on. But like you said, the high school kids, the junior high kids, they're already there anyway. My oldest daughter's like, well, I don't like the 4-day week because I got to go on Friday anyway because I got practice or whatever. Well, yeah, some of those kind of things are still going to happen, and so I think there's a lot of excitement about it, because the places that have gone ahead of us, nobody has gone back that I have found. Nobody has said, no, that didn't work, we're going back. So we'll see. We tried to let somebody else go make all the mistakes and try to learn from them. There'll still be bumps in the road, because definitely there are some childcare challenges. Childcare in our community is a challenge anyway. There's just not enough providers. And so that was definitely one of the biggest conversation pieces that we had, focused around opportunities for people just to take care of kids. And so we threw out some different ideas. I said, hey, I've got a 15-year-old, fixing to be 15-year-old that could babysit on some Fridays. And I know there's other kids that could, those are some opportunities. And I know that doesn't work for everybody.
But it could open up for somebody. And I think people will find solutions.
Correct.
When there's new problems, people will find new solutions.
I agree with that too. Yeah.
And I encourage anybody, really, that when there's new things, we're quick to, well, that's not going to work.
Right.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, let's see.
Because that thing might be better than the old thing.
Right.
But sometimes we're scared of change because we don't know how it's going to work, how it's going to look.
Yep.
And it really, I think, helps people be more creative and find better solutions.
Right.
Like, how can the kids learn better now?
Right.
And one of those is by being intentional. And the teachers get that opportunity now, that they get that new, even somebody that's been teaching 30 years, oh, I have something new. And if they take the opportunity to look at it like that,
right.
Like instead of, well, I've been doing it this way for the last 29 years, I don't want to change.
Right.
It's a new opportunity for new things for our community.
Right.
I know there's a new daycare opening up. That's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
That may have not been born out if we had not adopted a 4-day school week. Yep. So there's a new business opportunity. Maybe teenagers that have a hard time finding a part-time job can have new opportunities for making some income. And then it just creates new things that I think if we're open to and not be so quick to Debbie Downer them.
Right.
I think we can have some real growth and conversations.
Sure.
And so often we don't take time to find out how everything works. We're just quick to, well,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. We're going to talk negative about it.
Right.
And we don't take I was on the SHAC committee a long time, still am, but a long time ago.
Right.
And I never liked the the high calorie meals and the cafeteria. So I got on the shack committee. I'm going to change the world.
Right.
So I get on the shack committee and find out that, it's not a district thing.
Right.
It's a state thing.
Correct.
So if I really want to make a difference, I have to commit to go to the state and lobby and do all those things.
Right.
And then when I understood, I was like, I get it now. And I was like, okay, I'm good with that, because it averages out your meals. And if those kids are eating 5 days a week, it's going to average in the week.
Right.
So by learning, because I was quick to say, well, the school's not doing right.
Right.
But then when I took action, got on the committee and go, they're
Yeah.
doing exactly what they need to, but it's not, the district is following what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And then it was up to me, do I want to take that big step
Right.
and go to the state? And I didn't want to.
Right.
So I always use that as get involved and find out what's going on.
Right.
Don't sit on the sidelines and be negative about it, or say, well, this isn't going to work. Well, they don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
Get involved.
Yeah,
Talk
there's
to
gotta be
teachers,
something.
Talk to administration. In 2020, graduation. You and I had a conversation about graduation.
Absolutely.
Because, again, so many people were on the sidelines talking about what was going to go on. Go find out. And I thought it turned out to be a great graduation for
Absolutely.
2020.
Yep.
It was really a neat, I think one of the best ones.
It's unique because nobody else is going to have that experience ever.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that will be able to say they had that.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
So I encourage people all the time, whether it's the city, whether it's the school district, talk to those involved. Come talk to you. Come talk to Ms. Ferris, that is now the
assistant superintendent.
new assistant superintendent. Talk to your teachers. Talk to your district or your campus principals.
Yep.
Find out. Have those calm conversations.
Right.
Where you have conversation.
Right.
And communicate.
Yeah.
And as you said, and you have been an example of all these years, listen. The principal will listen to you, and administration will listen to you if you listen to them.
It's a two-way street, absolutely. And it kind of back to earlier, we said, listen when we can, say yes when we can, and admit when we don't know. I think so many times people get in a position or get into some, and they just think they I have to be right, and I can't ever say I don't know. I'm like, shoot, there's so much I don't know. And to me, that helps people understand that I'm just a human guy just like everybody else. And I'm honest. Like when we talked about the calendar, I don't know what this is going to look like. We think we know, and we are going to measure with some things and based on some others,
and plan to the best of your ability.
Absolutely. And it may not be great, but it may be the best thing we've done in this place in 20 years. We'll see.
When I plan group workouts, classes, I write it down on paper, and sometimes I tell them, well, that didn't look like it did on paper.
Right.
Because sometimes it turns out better.
Right.
And sometimes it turns out way worse. But you don't know until you put that into action.
Right. You get in there and start seeing how does it work and how does it play out, and what are the outcomes from it too, for sure.
So I just encourage people to be patient.
Yeah, be patient and have some conversations. We talk a lot. People talk a lot about a lot of things. And sometimes just sitting down and being able to talk through things gives us ideas and helps us understand. Because you'll send out surveys and you get bits and pieces of information, so we kind of feel like we know what people really, but then somebody says, I didn't really like that or this,
Because the big survey for the 4-day was.
It was overwhelming.
Overwhelming. We wanted to do it.
80 about 80-20.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, there's a lot of people that either really like this and aren't saying anything.
And so were you a little shocked because I'm sure you heard plenty of criticism. Were you a little shocked when that came about with such an overwhelming survey?
Absolutely. I want to say, let's see, who was first? Montague and Prairie Valley were the first. Goldberg were the first ones to really do it, and I thought there's no way that goes over here. No way. And so we were in an admin meeting one time, and we said, all right, we need to start looking at next year's calendar. Let's throw this question in. So we put in all the, you like this, start this kind of thing, and then what's your opinion? It was real generic, but what's your opinion of a 4-day school week? And it overwhelmingly 80-20 4, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's a whole lot more work that we need to do to talk about what this actually looks like. It's not, on those kind of things. And so that's when we started having some of those campus and district meetings, and then had some campus improvement meetings, and had some parents in, and then we actually had a town forum, and where people could come ask questions, and I did one at each one of the campuses with the staff, so did that kind of thing where the staff could ask questions too.
And I remember the town forum. I didn't go, but there wasn't a big attendance. Is that correct?
It rained like crazy that night. But yes, there was probably 30, about 30 people.
And people were quick to say, well, it was raining. I didn't want to go out.
Yeah.
But again, I encourage people, if it's important to you, the rain is just an obstacle.
Right.
The thunderstorm's just an obstacle.
We were still there.
Yeah. If it's important, you will get there.
Yeah.
I think too quick we're to blame a teacher, an event, something. Because sometimes we don't want to take responsibility for that.
Right.
If I felt strong, and I take it on me that if I wanted to change something about the cafeteria meal plan, I would go all the way to the state, maybe the nation, whatever I had to do, if I felt that strongly about it. But I have to say, I wasn't that invested in it. Right. And I think sometimes people need to own that and say, maybe I wasn't invested in that, so I can't complain about that.
To that level, right.
So so I don't complain about it. Right. And if we can have all kinds of reasons, but if you didn't go for whatever reason, own that and say, okay, let's see how it goes.
Yeah. I ask our staff to be solutionaries. Let's don't be complaining just to be complaining. We could complain about the state all day long. They said we got to do this, we got to do that. They don't give us enough money. It is what it is. So let's make a solution out of what we have. Let's be a solutionary. Let's come up with something and figure out what can we do to make a difference with what we have for our kids.
I listen to a lot of entrepreneurs on podcasts and things, and the most interesting thing I hear over and over and over from the entrepreneurs is that when they don't have anything, the best ideas come about.
Yeah.
And you can come up with the best solutions when you have minimal.
Yeah, we have nothing, and we got to make this work with what we've got. And a lot of times, the what is it? Breeds necessity. Necessity breeds invention, or something like whatever that comment is. Yeah. It's true in all aspects of life. Everything from folks to schools to entrepreneurs to whatever. So.
And so, just encourage people to be open-minded.
Absolutely.
And listen, and have those two-way communications.
Yep.
I think that's the greatest thing we can do, not only in the school but in our community, is have those conversations face to face, not via, because I think sometimes even via text, email, things get lost.
Oh yeah, it's hard to interpret what's being said and how interpret. Well, we literally had our entire office staff today do a personality inventory, and remember, when that person does something that frustrates you, it's not because they're trying to frustrate you.
Did you do a disc?
No, we actually did the personality colors. And so we have lots of blue people in there today, which was
so then you know how to deal with people.
We absolutely do.
And that's important.
Absolutely. I've done that when I was elementary principal. I actually did it with my classroom when I was first teaching, and I wasn't getting the results I wanted, and I went to a training, and I'm like, this... when you're 22, 23, you think whatever's the key to everything, I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done. But I was teaching my classroom, my kids in my classroom, the way I wanted to be taught. And there wasn't a classroom full of Blake Enlows, And so when I realized, I go, I'm frustrating them by what I'm doing, and they're frustrating me by what they're doing. Let's adjust. Let's take a look back and have a conversation about how do we all work together. And that's what I told the staff today. I said, in November, when we're frustrated with each other, take a step back and go, that's who they are. Because ultimately, the culture we're trying to build is all together pulling the same direction for the same goal. And it will be the strongest when we're doing that. But when we're individualized and trying to do our own things for our own self, we're going to hurt our organization. And that's not what we need to be doing.
And when everybody does a little, a lot gets accomplished.
A lot gets done.
And going against each other just doesn't
help anywhere.
Doesn't get anything
for sure.
So just a couple of things before we wrap up. What is probably one of the biggest successes that you've seen over your time here at Bowie ISD, from elementary principal to briefly junior high, high school, now superintendent?
Oh gosh, I'm definitely not a bragger. I hate talking about myself. One of the things that I would be successful, that I think, is the relationships. I think the relationships with the kids, with the staff, with the community, with parents, with the older generation, just being able to have conversations. I think that's one of the things that I would say has been a success, is that I've been able to build strong relationship and rapport with staff, students, and community all the way across.
I would agree with that, and I think that's so important. That so many times we look at what's the education, and yes, education is important. Those things are very important. What you have, what you need to do the job,
right?
But you can have the book knowledge, but if you don't have that relationship and that way to connect with people, you can lose, especially as a leader,
right?
If you can't connect and you can't listen and you can't communicate, you can have all the knowledge in the world. You can be the best administrator,
right?
On paper,
yeah.
But how does that look with your teachers leaving, with your principals leaving? It may not be because of money or anything. It might just be because of upper administration.
It might be the person. It might be the leadership that that is leading the organization.
But that being able to connect and communicate can take you a long way in a career. Can take you a long way in a school career as a student. Even.
Right.
Can you go talk to your teachers?
Right.
Can you have that conversation of what did I do wrong? How can I correct it? How can I be better? How can I play better?
Right.
How can I get more playing time? Instead of when you have those conversations and connect. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman in high school and you need to have that conversation with your baseball coach, your volleyball coach.
Right.
Have that conversation. Don't tell mom and dad, hey, go have that conversation. You're going to be a grown-up in just a few years.
Yes.
Have those conversations, and that teacher, that coach is going to have that conversation back because they've seen that from the top down.
Yeah, they can actually. I've had that with my junior high daughter. This summer I said, well, I don't want to play summer league basketball. Okay, in the grand scheme of things, is summer league basketball for a little girl going into 8th grade a big deal? No, not on the grand scheme of things. But at the end of the day, I said, I'm not having that conversation for you. I'm your dad. I'll support your decision. You're going to make the decision, but you're going to talk to the coaches. They have to learn to have conversations about topics that may not be as comfortable as they think. They lose that, that's a skill they've got to learn, and so, but you're absolutely right. Being able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody about a topic, whatever it may be, is a skill that our kids must have, and is lacking a lot. And when that opens that up, that just opens it up for interpretation and perception as to whatever you may think that person is trying to do. And 9 times out of 10, it's not anywhere near what is bad or whatever you've dreamed up in your head.
Because we see it from our perspective.
Correct.
Because we haven't gone to their side to have that conversation to see, oh, I do see it your way.
Yeah, I do understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And that's a key thing that people are missing, and that's why I think there's the fear of the unknown, because they won't go have that. They won't go talk. They won't, because they don't know how it's going to come out. I got to know what I'm going to say or whatever. Versus, no, let's just talk through and see. You know?
We'll mumble through it and have that conversation. And one might be wrong, and I think out of conversation comes, like you said, better new ideas. Something one person says, another one, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Or together to go, oh yeah, we can do that better.
Right.
And it's by those conversations that, and I think we need to do that not only in school but in life, is see what perspective somebody else is coming from before we think, like you said, because we think, oh, well, they're saying this or they're saying that. That's the way they're thinking, when that's not what they're thinking at all.
Yeah, I'll grab something and run down the hall and ask Miss Ferris or ask one of the, hey, what do you think about this? Just so I get another thought process on something. It might be the great idea, and that may be the way we go. But they say, have you thought about it this way? There are a lot of reflective conversation and coaching goes into a lot of what takes place in leadership, I think. Helping other people think through where they're trying to get and how they're going to get there. Because if you just tell them how to get there, that's not necessarily helping them on their journey.
You want them to be able to... Because they may get there in a way that you never thought of.
Right. And that's the experience piece that's invaluable. that you can't, as a 27-year-old assistant principal, I didn't have. But I got 5 years worth of it, 4 years worth of it before I went to elementary, and then I got 5 years of elementary experience that I had no idea. I could have read a book on how to be an elementary principal, but until I,
to experience
those kind of things, you have no idea.
And those experiences help you prepare you for being a superintendent. Yes, you had the certification years before you ever took the position.
Right.
But you still need those experiences to be, and still not prepare you totally, because there's still things that had never happened before.
Correct.
And there's still things that can happen in the future.
Correct.
That there's no preparing for, because they've never come about before.
Exactly.
They're not in textbook. They're not in history books.
They don't teach you about a global pandemic. They don't teach you about a tornado. They don't teach you about student staff death, and how to lead and wrap your arm around somebody when you lose a kiddo or a teacher. All those kind of things. They don't teach you that kind of stuff. And until you walk through those experiences, you don't know what you're going to do.
And I always encourage people, because you're saying that it's not about what's in the textbook. It's not what should I do as administrator. I think sometimes it comes down to what should I do as a human with another human, whether it's a tornado, whether it's death. What should I do? What's the right thing to do? And I think sometimes we do a lot of book work, but we need to do a lot of self work.
Yep.
Because when we're better humans, we're not wondering what to do. We put that arm around that individual and give them a hug.
Yeah. And say, we'll figure this out.
Because that's the right thing to do. My dad always tells me you can never go wrong by doing the right thing.
Right.
He said the right thing may not always be easy.
Correct.
But you can never go wrong by doing the right thing.
That's right.
And I remember that all the time. And I think as humans, we need to remember that as people when we're dealing with other people. What I always like to ask everybody the last question.
Okay.
What makes Bowie your hometown? You're not moved here, and I've had a lot of guests that I've had that weren't from here, but it's their hometown.
Right.
What makes Bowie your hometown?
The people here. I have some of the best friends that I'll ever have, and that I met while we were here, that we're still here, and for my kids, it's their home, and for me, it's my home. I went to school in Coppell. I spent a lot of time in Coppell, but Coppell's not my home. A lot of people don't realize that I didn't go to school here. There are a lot of people that go, "You didn't go to school here?" Because it is, we're all in. This is where we will be as long as the Lord wants us to serve here. This is where we'll be until He tells me to go do something else. So that's why it's the people, the relationships that we've built, and that the community, and just trying to help this community be better tomorrow than it was today. And one little step, whatever piece that Addie and I get to play in that role, that's what we want to do.
Make for a better community.
Absolutely.
Better than when you came.
That's right.
And I want to thank you and commend you. Do a plug for our 5K that we do. Ever since we did the Synergy Shuffle.
Absolutely.
We did that. You came to all of those. Now our All for One Community 5K. You still come and participate, and I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Because you do lead from the front.
Right.
And you've gotten teams together, and that is just a small thing, and that you do that I notice, that you do lead and you do support. And I know you do that with so many other things. But that's one thing that affects us that I notice, and I want to commend you, and I appreciate you doing that and encouraging staff, but just being there, taking the time again, because that's the most, anybody can give any amount of money. Money can be replaced. Time is invaluable. We never get that back. So when I see somebody spend their time in that manner, that might be something I'm putting on, or something you do for someone else.
Sure.
That's very noticeable, because we don't get that back. Right. And that's the biggest investment, when you give somebody your time. You can give them money, that's easy.
Right.
But when you give them your time, when you could be with your kids, you could be doing other things, that's the best.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
So thank you, and thank you for taking a little time, and thanks for leading our school district, being a part of our community, and leading our community and make a difference in our community, and leaving it better than you found it, because you've been through a lot your time here, and you've managed it all well. I know there's a lot of people that watch and look, and it's just been handled well.
I appreciate that.
And with humility, and I think that's with an attitude of, we don't have all the answers, but we'll learn together. We'll figure out the answers together. Right. And I appreciate that in sitting down with you. It's not, I have all the answers and follow me.
Yeah, definitely.
And I hope through, and my goal is through the podcast, My Hometown, is that people get to know the individual, not the position.
Right.
Because the position is just a title. There's more to Blake Enlow than Superintendent of Bowie ISD.
Yes, and at some point he will just be Blake Enlow, and hopefully he's still around here.
And there will come a day when, it's more than, Blake, the superintendent. Yeah. There's more to you. There's a family man. Yeah. There's a Christian. There's somebody that wants to make a difference in kids' lives, in school, in church, that love your parents, still look for advice from your parents. Right. Moved here because of family. Right. So there's so much more than just superintendent. Yeah. So I hope we today shared a little bit of that, and your heart for our school, for our kids, for our staff, for our people. And so thank you for taking that time to join us today.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for what you do for our community.
Well, thank you. And thanks to each of you for stopping by. And we're looking forward to seeing you around my hometown.